Okay, and what we want to do in this video is continue on our discussion of the different things that cause shifts of the demand curve. So obviously we're still on demand, but what we're talking about and continuing to talk about now are the different things, the non-price determinants of demand, the different things that cause the demand curve to shift. And it results in a change in demand, not a shift in the demand curve results a change in demand, not a change in quantity demanded. So to recap what we have done already, to recap about the non-price determinants of demand, the things that cause a shift in the demand curve. The first one was tastes of the consumer. The second one was other related goods prices, so the prices of substitutes, the changes in the price of substitutes or the change in the price of complements. The next thing was expectations of future price of the consumer. And then this one that we're doing now is income of the consumer. So, but what we're going to do is, and I put a question mark here intentionally, we're going to talk about what are normal or inferior goods. Now, there's no reason why you should know what these are. Please don't concern yourself with it yet. We're going to go into detail and there's no stress about it. So to remind ourselves what not changes in non-price determinants do, they cause a shift on the demand curve. So the demand curve will either shift out. An outward shift of the demand curve results in every price more is bought, and this is called an increase in demand, not an increase in quantity demanded, because only a change in the selling price of the good itself can cause a change in quantity demanded. On the other hand, an inward shift of the demand curve means that at every price less is bought, and this is called a decrease in demand and not a decrease in quantity demanded. Remember that the changes in the non-price determinants of demand cause a change in demand, not a change in quantity demanded. So we're going to talk about changes in income, but before we do that, we have to talk about things called normal goods and inferior goods. Now, I intentionally put this line here at the start of the video because this can become incredibly difficult for certain people, and please, I hope that you just don't let it. Just, watch the video a few times until you understand it. I think it's quite clear. So let's talk about the definition of a normal good. Well, a normal good is a good with a positive income effect. So the first thing you should be asking is, what in the name of God does that mean? So let's put it in English, essentially, right? So what we're going to say is, normal goods are goods that as you get richer, you buy more of them. And then you might be saying, if we just stop there in the definition, you might be saying, okay, yeah, but John, that's grand and all, but that's every single good. And I'm going to try and explain to you why it's not, okay? The reason is because as you get richer, you can buy more of the things that you want. Okay, you can buy more of the things that you wanted to buy but were not in a position to afford them, and therefore you couldn't buy them. But now, following getting a new job or a raise in your job, you are now have high enough income in order to afford these goods, and as such you can buy them. So you do buy them because you wanted to. These are the type of goods that you could not afford to buy initially before your income increased, and now you can, so you buy them. Because if you couldn't afford to buy them, you were buying zero. Now if you only buy one, that is an increase in the amount purchased, and as such you're buying more of them following an increase in income. Okay, this means that an increase in income would cause an outward shift of the demand curve for normal goods. And that is 100% true. Try to remember that. Also, for normal goods, you buy less of them as you get poorer, okay? The reason is you cannot afford to buy these goods that you liked anymore. So let's say, hopefully never happens, but let's say you lose your job. You are no longer in a position where you can afford to buy the things that you were initially buying before you lost the job, before you had a decrease in income, and as such you have to buy the cheaper, potentially worse alternative. So this is the idea. It's kind of like, Frosties versus the store brand Frosted Flakes. Okay, that's kind of the idea, but we're going to go into a much better example. This means that a decrease in income would cause an inward shift of the demand curve for normal goods. So you want the certain things that you usually buy. You can't afford them now because you've either lost your job or you've got to pay a decrease in work, and as such you have to economize and cut back on certain things. And so some of these things that you cut back on are the things that you want to buy, but you feel that you don't have the money anymore to buy, and those are normal goods. If a certain good fits into that category, it's a normal good, and following a reduction in income, that means that you will buy less of them, and as such, an inward shift in demand. That's what a normal good is. Think of something that you'd like to buy but can't afford it. Now think, if you could afford it, would you buy it? If the answer is yes, it's a normal good. Now you're buying that good on a regular basis, even if it's something like a car, you're buying it every 3 years, you're upgrading every 3 years, then you lose your job, maybe you even sell your car, but you certainly don't keep upgrading every 3 years. Okay, that's a normal good. As you get richer, you buy more. As you get poorer, you buy less. Now, keep remaining calm, because I think that in a lot of different, books or videos on YouTube, a lot of people don't explain this well, and I hope that I am not in that category. An inferior good is a good with a negative income effect. That's the definition. Fine, brilliant. It's irrelevant, really, until you have to write that down in an exam. Let's say what it means in English. This means that as you get richer, there are certain goods that you buy less of. The reason is they were the goods that you didn't really want to buy, but you were not in a financial position, you did not have enough income to buy the goods that you actually wanted. So as you get richer, you buy less normal goods because you didn't really want to be buying them in the first place. You wanted the better, the higher quality goods that you couldn't afford. You become richer, you get a pay rise, you get a new job, whatever it is, and now you can afford them, so you buy those nicer goods. And in doing that, you stop buying the goods you didn't want to. Okay, and that's what it means, okay? So, now with the increase in income, you can afford to buy more of the goods you wanted to, so you buy less of these inferior goods. Therefore, an increase in income would cause an inward shift of the demand curve for inferior goods. Now, I know there's a lot written on the screen, but I'm going to go through an example now in a second. Not right now, but in the next slide. So, the term inferior good does not, and in brackets, necessarily refer to goods of lower quality. And that's true. You can see millionaires driving in a beat up old car. And you'd be like, well, why don't you buy, the brand new BMW or something you can easily afford? You get loads of money, and they have, a sentimental reason in order to keep driving that car. Maybe their father gave them that car, and now he's no longer with us or something like that. And they're like, no, I'm never getting rid of that. Not a chance. Like, that's just too important to me. So that is something, it's down to the preference that you personally and I personally have for certain goods. So apparently, I don't know, but you see, the best wines or something can cost upwards of $25,000 US, and I'm just like, wine is wasted on me. If I went down to the local supermarket and bought a bottle of whatever for $12, $15, that'll suit me down to the ground. It would be a complete waste. So even if I got way richer than I am now, I'm not going to be spending money on stupidly overpriced bottles of wine. That is my preference. However, for you, it could be completely different. You may absolutely love the idea of testing different wines, even particularly the expensive one, and that's your preference. So for you, expensive wine would be a normal good. For me, it certainly isn't. Okay, I'm not going to buy any more of expensive wine than I currently am now, which is zero. All right, so that's the kind of idea. It does come down to your preference, absolutely. A good may be a normal good at one point in your life, and an inferior good at another point in your life. Now that, I'm sure, has confused you. So suspend your decision on whether you're not confused or whether or not you are confused until we go on to this. So let's assume now, right, that you're straight out of college and you have no money, okay? And let's say, I'm talking zero money. So you are walking everywhere. And you get your first job out of college, and it's a good job. Let's say, you're a lawyer, you're an accountant, you're a doctor or whatever. So you have a few pounds now, but you never get a lot of money at the start of any career. You've always got to be patient and work hard. So we've got a pay rise. All right, so we don't have no money anymore. We have a pay rise. We have some money. So now how are we getting to work? Well, we're going to get the bus. Okay, so you couldn't even afford to get the bus at the start. You were walking everywhere. Now you can afford to get the bus to and from work. You went from 0 purchases of bus journeys in a week to 10 purchases of bus journeys in a week, to and from work, Monday to Friday. So as your income increased, you purchased more bus journeys, and as such, that was a normal good. That's fine. As I got richer, I bought more. That's the definition of a normal good. So bus journeys are a normal good. Amazing. Now what has happened is, so just to keep it clear, you were taking 10 bus journeys a week. Now what happens is you get a pay rise. Now, nothing crazy, but you feel a little bit, you have a little bit more walking around money. So every Friday to treat yourself, because you know you're going to go out for a few pints on the Friday, you leave the car at home, or you don't even have a car, so you don't get the bus, you get a taxi in and a taxi home. Okay? No problem there. So that's every Friday. So your demand for bus journeys went from 10 journeys a week to 8 journeys a week, Monday to Thursday, twice a day. And on a Friday, you get a taxi twice on the Friday. So what has happened to your demand for taxi journeys? Well, they have increased from 0 to 2 in a week. So therefore, that's a normal good. What has happened to your demand for bus journeys following the pay rise? Your income increased and your demand for bus journeys fell. So therefore, that is no longer a normal good as it was in the beginning. It is now an inferior good. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's all you have to see is like, if I get richer, am I buying more of something? Yeah, it's a normal good, at least at that moment in time. If I get richer, am I buying less of something? Yeah, it's an inferior good, at least for that moment in time. Okay, now what happens is you get another pay rise. You said, look, you know what? I'm a bit too old to be getting public transport and taxis and all this stuff. I'm just going to buy a car. Now, if you can afford to buy that, send one to me. Okay, but in the, I'm sure, the very uncertain or very unlikely event that you won't be sending me brand new BMWs, we'll continue on with this video. So that you get a pay rise and you buy a car. Now, you are driving to and from work 5 days a week. So that's 10 car journeys in the week. Forget about it, Saturday and Sunday. So what has happened to your demand for car journeys? Well, they have increased. So therefore, it's a normal good. What has happened to your demand for taxis? Well, they have decreased. Therefore, it's no longer a normal good anymore. Well, what is it? It's an inferior good. So what I want you to understand, even if you want to take this off the screen, you get so rich you start taking helicopter rides everywhere and you don't even bother taking the car, well then that becomes an inferior good and the helicopter ride becomes a normal good. So I just want you to see that, at least play this part of the video again if you don't understand something. So a normal good is you buy more of something as you get richer, you buy less of something as you get poorer. An inferior good is you buy less of something as you get richer and more of it as you get poorer. So let's have an old chat about this. A rise in income for a normal good. Well, a normal good, again, is a good that you buy more of as you get richer. So you've become richer. It's a normal good. You're going to buy more of it. How do we show that you're going to buy more of it without changing the price? Because the price has not changed. An outward shift of the demand curve. So what does this mean? First of all, it's called an increase in demand, and it means that more is purchased at every price, but I'm just going to show you the price P1 and say that more is purchased at P1, at P2, wherever that is along here, at P3, wherever that is along here. And that's true because your income has increased. It's a normal good. Normal goods are goods that you buy more of as you get richer. Therefore, you buy more of it, outward shift in the demand curve. What happens to your demand for a normal good if your income falls? Well, let's just think about this for a second. So you're back on the right-hand side of the previous slide, or the two previous slides, and you lose your job. You were driving to and from work every day, now you lose your job. So you're so concerned about money now that you actually sell your car and you start taking the bus to go to all the interviews. Well, what has happened to your demand for car journeys? It has fallen. Why? Because your income is no longer big enough to afford the car journeys, the petrol, the insurance, the tax, all that kind of stuff. So your demand for car journeys falls. Absolutely. The bus journeys, or let's just go to bus because it's easier. The bus journeys were the inferior good at that stage. And we're going to talk about that in the next two slides. But your demand for car journeys fall. Now, I'm only showing this at one price. It's true at every price. I'm only showing this at price P1. It's true at every effective price along the price axis. what do we call this? Well, this is an inward shift in the demand curve. It is a decrease in demand. The price itself has not changed. All we're saying is that your income has changed, and as such, you can no longer afford the normal goods that you wanted to afford, so therefore you're forced to buy inferior goods through your lack or reduced income. Now, what we're saying here is we're going to talk about the exact same scenario that we just spoke about, but we're going to talk about it in different terms. So you sold your car. The car was the normal good. You started getting the bus again. The bus is the inferior good. What happened following the fall in income that occurred after you lost your job? What happened to the demand for bus journeys, which is the thing you didn't want to buy, but now you've lost your job, your income has fallen, so you're forced to buy. A reduction in income has caused this. Well, your bus journeys demand went from 0 to 10 bus journeys a week. That's an outward shift. Okay? So therefore, a fall in income forces consumers to buy inferior goods, which are the goods they didn't really want to buy, but were forced to through lack of income. Your income has been reduced. You now have a lack of income compared to what you had. So now you have to demand more inferior goods. You can't afford to buy the normal goods that you like. You can't afford to keep your car. So therefore your demand for bus journeys rises. On the other hand, let's say now you get a job again. You're like feeling absolutely, flush with cash. You say to yourself, do you know what, stuff these bus journeys, I'm going to buy another car. So your demand for bus journeys, an inferior good, falls following a rise in income. The demand for the inferior goods fall following a rise in income because now you're back in a place where you can afford to buy the things you want to and are not forced. And I say forced, nobody is forcing you. Forced through a reduction in income to buy the goods that you didn't want to buy. So as you get richer again, your demand for bus journeys, an inferior good, falls, and your demand for normal goods rises. And that is literally it. That is an inward shift in the demand curve caused by a rise in income. So this is the demand curve for an inferior good, in this case bus journeys, caused by a rise in income. The price of bus journeys have not changed. All we're saying is your income has changed. So you just really need to understand what a normal good is and what an inferior good is, and how changes in income will cause the demand curve to shift depending on whether the good is a normal good or an inferior good.